Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spotlight on Unicorns. Today, I am very excited to have somebody who's been in my life, other than my sister, the longest, the second longest. And her name is Alex Van Tol, and we've known each other when she was Luckhurst many, many years ago. Little tiny people preschool, kindergarten, right? Kindergarten, I think, or first grade.
Did you start at Christopher Robin?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Kindergarten?
Yeah, from the very
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, then I went to junior hall. So I was there when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
there 3 and 4. And then I guess you and I met when I was 5, but we became close friends when we were in grade 2.
Yeah.
That's my memory.
Yeah, that's my memory as well. And
Yeah.
you're in all of the birthday pictures from back then.
We
I
were
always go back and see them.
I think we ended up being friends because we were both the tallest at that.
Yes, we were always beside each other in line.
We were so tall. Yeah.
It was proximity. I always say that, like, I kind of petered out about 9, and then everybody else kept going, and I kind of stayed sort of hobbity size. So
9. That's
I kind of like I that was it. So I thank you for joining, and I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about your career journey and what you've experienced over the years. And so first off, why did you choose to be, you've now shifted your career again, but originally, now you're a book coach, but before, you were doing writing, you were doing teaching, you were doing like all kinds of really interesting things, but sort of with the theme of communication. So how did you get here?
How did I get here? Well, so yeah, this is sort of my third meaningful career, teaching being the first. And you know what's funny is I just came out of about 15 years of freelancing. Before that was about 6 to 10 years of teaching. And I say 6 to 10 because there were some maternity leaves in there. But I had gone into teaching because I had sort of listened to people in my orbit who said, well, you can't make any money as a writer. So I was like, no, you can't make any money as a writer. So I went and did my teaching degree and taught for a while. Then when I had my first son, I realized I didn't actually have the energy to teach and then go home and be an alive kind of parent. So that's when I started really looking at writing again. I really wanted to work for myself. I really wanted to work from home. That was such a dream. So that's how I started down the writing path. And that's been a really good career for me. It's been very good to me over the years. But after a number of years of freelancing, I think it was just really, it's kind of tough to feel like it's tough to feel a sense of completion. It's tough to really sink your hands into a project. My schedule was always kind of bongo because you're always working with different people's timelines. So my most recent career, like the one that I'm in now, although I did have sort of the last 4 years have been a bit of a cosmic mess in sort of trying to find my way, but I've landed in book coaching, which feels like a no-brainer. Why didn't I do that like 10 years ago? But whatever, it took me a while to get here. And so I'm just sort of newly minted as a book coach, but really it's a great fit because I've got, I've published before, I've published in magazines, I've published books. I know the industry reasonably well. It's interesting. So it was just kind of sometimes I feel like a bit of a pinball, my career path has been a bit pinball-y, but always pinballing me closer and closer towards a place of really good alignment. And right now I feel like book coaching is really excellent alignment. Did that answer how I got here?
Oh, absolutely.
In a really roundabout way.
Well, sometimes that's kind of how it has to happen. But actually, on that note, so is this what you wanted to be when you were little, when you were bouncing around? Or like, what were kind of some of the dreams or the things that you wanted to be?
I had one dream. My earliest dream was to be a book writer. So I wanted authorship early. And then that was in grade 2. And I think you and I had the same teacher because we all had the same teachers up to grade 3. And that was Mrs. Benjamin. And I remember, I actually know that I I wanted to be a book writer because I was leafing through a box of school paraphernalia that my mom had kept years ago. And I pulled out one of the old work cahiers, the workbooks from
Yeah.
that age. And I think it was some assignment where we had to respond to some questions about leprechauns, actually. It was about leprechaun. And it was that sort of old purple mimeographed
Yeah.
page. So I was looking at that and I saw the teacher had marked a lot of red on my page. And she seemed upset that I hadn't followed the instructions or something. And underneath at the very bottom of the page in pencil, I had written, "I would like to be a book writer when I grow up." And I was like, there it is. I know that I have wanted to be an author for all these years.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And then when I was in grade 6, I had a brief moment of really wanting to be an actress, which I think I probably would have done well at, but was just way too shy to actually make that happen. Writing books is really good for shy people.
Yes, it is. You can create your entire universe there and not have to leave the house.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the hardest part of your job over the years?
Oh, over the years.
Or even now?
The hardest part of my job now, is probably the sitting, like the stationariness of it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, really, it's I didn't notice it so much 10 years ago, but now, at 50, it's like, oh yeah, my body actually isn't super thrilled about sitting. So that is actually the hardest part of my job. The next hardest part at the moment is because I'm still sort of calibrating how much time it takes me to work through a client's pages. I'm often spending quite a lot more time than I'm being compensated for, but I knew that going in, and I allowed myself that kind of leeway. I knew that it would take me a while to set my prices. So that's currently freelancing, like I had said, was just really, it was the scheduling, just not being able to have big blocks of work time during the day, because when you have clients that need to meet at 9 o'clock or at 10:30, and then they need to bump their meeting, just creates this real energetic sort of spiral, and it knocks me off. Like, the funny thing about writers is that it's just such a different job than other jobs. I think there are a lot of jobs like writing that require super sustained concentration. And for me, it's quite easy to knock me out of that orbit. So it's very different than being a teacher, for example. You're in a space where you can shift your attention fairly easily from one thing to another, from one child to another. But writing is just not that way. So that was really tough. It's just the scheduling and trying to actually find the time to do the work.
Yeah.
And then before that, the tough part of teaching, I had such a good time teaching and such a good experience, but for me, probably it was just a couple things. One was being able to actually have enough time for the child in front of me. I never felt like I had enough time for the child in front of me.
Yeah.
And another tough part was just knowing that in the current system, or the way it was, 15 years ago when I was teaching, it's just not set up in ways that actually support real learning. So, putting children in same age groupings isn't really a reasonable way of categorizing them. And then you've already given them a fairly artificial way of relating to each other. And then on top of that, you put the need to master, or at least come to some sort of degree of understanding of a reasonably arbitrary set of material that, and I could just see how that put children, it dims their light. It really dimmed their light. And so that was my biggest struggle with teaching, was curriculum. And so that's why I ultimately parted ways with that and having kids. So those were the tough parts of teaching.
Yeah. And if you could change anything, or if there was one thing that you could have done differently, as far as your career progression, what do you think that would have been?
Yeah. Well,
You mentioned like now that you're doing, if you could have sort of shortcut the journey that you took to go to book coach, right? Because you did start writing, you do have a fairly large catalog of young, I think it falls into the YA category, right?
right.
And you know, there's quite a few of the books out there that you've done. And so to be able to have gone from that to then doing the book coaching, right?
Bit
You
of a
know, sort of
no-brainer.
short circuited all the other the
Well,
freelance stuff for a
I
while.
left publishing, I distinctly stopped publishing. I did publish one book in 2021, I think. It was a board book.
Mhm.
That came about because I was actually coaching another writer who wrote the main book that was kind of the Kickstarter for that one.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't have submitted anything into the published space had it not been for that.
Mhm.
But the last book I actually put out, I think was 2017, and I decided to stop for a few reasons, but one key reason being I realized that what happens is you do end up having a backlist.
Mhm. Mhm.
Your backlist can pigeonhole you over time. So even though I was, making money on the books and I was doing school visits and having these great, moments of connecting with readers, I realized that if I kept in that space and
Mhm.
kept putting out books that they they were enjoyable to write, they usually had a bit of a social message, but they
Yeah.
weren't really things that I truly vibrated with and needed to put into the world. So that's when I decided to just take a pause. And I think because I left publishing in that way, that sort of took me out of it. But I also again had the experience that it's tough to make money in words and in books. So
Mhm.
at that time, that was my understanding. You could work as an editor, but that's a lot of sitting and that's a lot of cognitive, all day long. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You could write books, but if you want to make a living writing books, you've got to be a machine.
Yeah.
You've got to have constant titles coming out, and you do really well when you do a lot of author visits, which are exhausting.
Yep.
But and I didn't know about book coaching. There was nothing on the radar, certainly 10 years ago about it. I only found out about it. I actually only found out that it was a thing
Mm.
about this time last year. So we're in November 2023. So it was like last fall when
Mm.
I Googled and I was like, is there such a thing as a book coach?
Mm.
And that's when yeah, so I would have done that earlier,
Mm.
but even more than shifting into book coaching earlier, I would have followed my own interests more.
Mm.
Um, and I would have, yeah, just honored what lit me up.
Mm.
That's always the indicator for what's going to give you satisfaction over time is what are my interests and how can I follow my interests into something that, like, what's down this hallway, what doors are going to pop open. So I wish I'd had a little less faith in what
Mm.
other people thought I should do or what they were trying to warn me about out
Mm.
there in the space, and a little more trust in the plan.
Mm. Mhm. No, definitely. Um, if you could change anything about your job right now, what would it be? I know it's new. It's pretty new.
So it's
So,
new, but it's very familiar because it's still me
yeah.
working with words,
Hmm.
working with ideas. Um, what's new about it is working with other writers, which is incredible. So instead of working for people to produce the content, it's like the whole tables have flipped. It's awesome. I
Mm.
leave meetings now. I don't know if I told you this on one of our phone calls, but like I hang up or I get off the Zoom call and I have this like feeling that goes through me because I don't have the deliverables.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't have it anymore. Like they need to bring it back to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but wait, your question was,
If you could change anything about it, I think it's
yes, I
pretty,
wrote some notes here. Yes. So
yeah.
one of the things that I would change is, oh yeah, getting a reclining workstation.
Ah, nice.
Have you seen them?
No, no, no. Do you actually like go back, like
Yes.
recline? Like,
Yeah. So like if you've ever seen, we have a store here in Victoria called the Relax the Back store, and it's
oh,
for
that they have them here too. Yeah, yeah. They've got those.
like
Yeah.
you get one of those chairs that goes all the way. It's like a zero gravity chair, but they
Oh,
can be really nice.
Yeah.
So imagine this, you're sort of in this lounger,
Yeah.
very, on your back. And I've seen a few workstations where there's a really big, like arced arm that holds your monitor right
Oh,
above
okay.
you. And
Yeah.
then there's a tray that's built on as well that holds your keyboard, so that you actually can just rest, and you're not stressing your vascular system by having your legs, down all day.
Yeah.
You're not stressing your back necessarily because you're
Yeah.
supported. Like,
Yeah.
the whole thing is ergonomically awesome.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
like, I don't know, they're like $4,000 up to $7,000 or $8,000. So that would be great, because right now, like, I sit here sometimes, but mostly only for meetings. Quite
Mhm.
often I'm in that chair behind
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
legs crossed, or sometimes I'll bunch them sort of sideways. Often I'm lying on my sofa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm lying on my bed. So I like to be taking some pressure off of my body, because it is a lot of sitting. And I'm up and down all the time. Like, I drink constantly, I'm up, and I pee constantly, I make tea like
Yeah. Yeah.
all day. But
Yeah.
sitting is sitting. So I would definitely get a reclining workstation.
Yeah, those I've seen those things
You
on
should get one.
sort of like here and there, you know. I think I totally agree with you with the sitting thing. I think
Mm.
having like the sit stand desk, I think it helps a lot of people too, you know. But it's still, it's like you're standing, you're putting pressure on your back as opposed to like sitting. So
Well, I've
um
talked with a few people about the standing desks,
mm,
and I've tried it. Like, I've got a couple setups here that let me actually stand.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and a few people, it works for them, especially if they're having meetings. I have
yeah.
one friend who runs a company, and she actually will do a lot of meetings on her treadmill,
Oh, I've
um,
seen those ones. Yeah.
under her desk. Yeah. But there's some sort of disconnect between writing and standing. I could
Mm,
probably actually review people's pages and
yeah,
give
yeah,
feedback. But
yeah,
in terms of dropping in and actually writing,
yeah.
like, there's something, maybe I've just, my neural loop is way too wired in for sitting. So the stand desks don't work as well for me as they would for maybe someone else.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
The one of the things that I've been asking people, and it's pretty interesting, the answers that people come back with is, what would you tell your younger self about who you are now?
Ooh, what would I tell her about who I am now? Or what advice would I give?
I think just like who, you know, if you were to just describe yourself,
Yeah.
to your younger self, like, you know, you said you put down on the piece of paper that you wanted to be an author. Would you let her know, hey, you know, we became an author?
Well, you know what I would say? I
Yeah.
would say, you hit that one 13 years ago, and you hit it way too early, because once it was done, you had no other goals. Like,
Nice.
that's actually been a really interesting thing for me. Like, I entered adulthood.
Mm,
Even when I was teaching, I had the hope of publishing a book. And when I was teaching, I was writing picture books, because that's what everybody does when they want to break into publishing. Not
mhm.
everybody, a lot of people. And picture books are actually harder to write than most books, because you need to tell a concise story with really huge emotional resonance.
Mhm.
So it's really difficult. But yeah, I mean, I would probably warn my younger self, have another goal, because when you get that book published in 2010, you're going to be like, okay.
Then what?
um yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I would there are so many directions I could have gone, and
Mm,
I've ended up as a book coach and as a writer, not because I think it's where I was destined to be. I
mm,
still think I have not found that thing.
mm,
I'm going to take back the word found, because I've stopped searching.
mm,
And that's key. And that's something I would actually let my younger self know as well, is that it's not up to you to find it. It's up to you to follow the vibration, follow, like I was saying before, follow the interest,
mhm,
follow where things feel like there's flow, right?
mhm.
Follow the flow, and that's going to lead you to where you need to go. Um, and that could have and would have changed a lot of things for me. There's nothing about my path or anybody's that isn't perfect for where they are, because
Mhm.
we often need to go through we always need to go through all the things we need to go through to get to where we are.
Mhm.
But I would definitely say to my younger self, um, like anything's possible.
Mhm.
Anything's possible. And because of that, you actually need to be really careful about what you're intentional about, or where you send your intentions, or how strongly you try to manifest things, or how hard you work towards things. Because really, if you are focusing energy consistently in any direction, you're going to get what you want. And you don't always necessarily know if that's the right thing for you. You might think you want it, but it might not be the right thing for you. I've definitely brought a few things into my world through the power of intention,
Mhm.
that I'm not sure if I just relaxed my grasp, I'm not sure I would have called those things to me. So
Mhm. Mhm.
long answer to your question, but I would definitely sit and give this young child some advice about how to don't make vision boards. I would say
Yeah.
that don't make vision boards, because they're really strong.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, if you really, you could be fishing and get something that you weren't expecting, right? So,
And for sure.
it,
And even if it's something you expect, there can be edges to it that you haven't acknowledged. I think there's a lot of beauty and benefit in the advice to visualize, and in the advice to manifest, and the advice to send intentions. But I think because we're so surrounded by a culture that makes it difficult for us to hear our own signal, we
Mhm.
often end up getting swept around in the noise and asking for things that matter on an ego level. So like just quick grabs are like a certain kind of house, or
Mhm.
a certain kind of spouse, or
Mhm.
but actually the work is to just let go,
Mhm.
and you know bring your attention to the present moment as much as you can, because that's when you can actually pick up the signal.
Yeah.
If you are anywhere but in the present moment, it's really difficult to hear that signal through the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely there doing that work right now.
You
It's like,
are, I know, I love it.
stop spending so much time. I've spent so much time in future that I'm like, I've missed out on so many opportunities to just focus on the moment. It's like, what's the next thing? Like, thinking like, okay, what's the next job going to be? What's the next thing that, I'm going to be able to accomplish, instead of like enjoying where I'm at right now. Right. So it's
And
hard
I
though. It's hard to kind of change that mindset. So,
totally,
um,
and I think
yeah,
most people would.
it's a lot of work.
Yes, it's
So
constant. Yeah.
speaking of work, who's been the person or entity, or what's helped you the most in your career?
Yes. So I have thought about this question, and I appreciate so much that you sent me the questions ahead of time, because um, as a recovering journalist, I know that that's very helpful. So I have three people who have been critical in advancing my career.
Mhm.
um, One goes back, what year are we in? 2023. So
Mhm.
one of them goes back 20 years.
Mhm.
And he's retired now, but his name is Jerry Truscott. And he was, at the time, he was the publisher at the Royal BC Museum.
Mhm.
And I was wanting to do some freelance work. So I was sending out cold call letters, like a letter I folded up in an envelope and mailed away. And
Mhm.
I just wrote him a letter and said, I've got these publication credits, and I'd been doing magazine work, and I'd love to write for the museum.
Mhm.
And out of nowhere, he said yes.
Mhm.
So that was actually huge, because he took a chance on somebody who was unproven.
Mhm.
And I started writing some articles for the magazine that the museum put out at the time, which morphed into becoming their writer on contract. And that was the first really meaningful client I had. And it was a great client. I was like,
That's
oh
an
my God,
awesome.
with a provincial institution. Hello.
Yeah.
So Jerry, I've thanked him profusely many times, and he always gets so embarrassed and hilarious about it. But Jerry really started me down the road
Yeah.
as a writer. After that, the next person who really kickstarted things for me was Andrew Wooldridge, and he is the publisher at Orca Book Publishers.
Mm.
And that was in 2009. I had approached Orca because they were advertising for somebody to write some teacher's guides.
Mm.
And being a teacher, I was like, I can do these guides. And so I did some guides. And then, having done a good job, he actually offered for me to try writing a book for one of their series.
Mm.
That's actually what got me started writing books, which was awesome. And then the third and the most recent person who's impacted my career, who I am still working with and appreciate so much as a mentor and a friend, is Ian Chisholm. And he's the founder of the Roy Group.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Roy Group. I'm always kicking people's asses for that. It's Roy Group. That's so funny. But I really appreciate Ian because he picks up my signal in a way that a lot of people don't.
Mm.
And I like his trust in me. We've worked together for about 5 years in different capacities. And he invited me to help him write his book, which is really what shifted everything for me towards book coaching.
Nice.
So 3 people who have had a definite hand in steering where I am now.
That's awesome. It's nice too that you have like a very, very clear list of people that that have been helping you along the way. And
it's been a lot, but they get top billing because like there's no mistaking the turns that my career has taken.
Yeah, because of their input. So now that because you got well, one's in university now, one's heading towards the finishing up high school. What is your most important job, do you feel like, now that you're almost going to be an empty nester soon? Like what is kind of like the next thing as far as the importance of jobs for you?
Okay, I'm going to laugh at you because that was such a leading question.
I know. Sorry.
You have 2 kids. What's the most important job? Never mind. I'm not going to say what I wrote.
Well, no, honestly, some people might not say the kids. There's people out there, they have different.
True. Well, yeah, within that important job, the most important job that I'm doing with my boys, who are 19 and 16 now. It's like, where'd that time go?
I know.
Most important job that I'm doing with them is the same thing that I would have done had I known for my younger self. And that's just to help them tune in to where there's flow.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not always successful at all, because often kids don't hear from us as well as they hear from other adults. Mm-hmm. They don't hear from us as well as they hear from their peers, especially when they get to a certain age, right? So I think I maybe missed that window. Like up until about 12, your children are sponges for everything you say and do, for better or for worse. But now that they are older, my noise is there with everybody else's noise. So I just hope to be a living example. And that's part of my job too, is to be in integrity in terms of, do I walk my talk? Mm-hmm. Can they track my career progression and see that when I implement the things that I am teaching them, does it bear fruit in my life? And one of the most important things that I'm, helping them to understand is that relationships are really what are going to open doors for you. You can be skilled, you can be a subject matter expert, but it is other people who are going to make new things possible for you. They're going to open doors, and you get better at relationships when you get better at tuning into yourself and knowing yourself and being integrity and in alignment with yourself, which the word integrity has these moral overtones, right? It's like following rules, telling the truth, and being a nice person. That is one definition of integrity. Another definition of integrity is just, are you whole? you behaving in a way that's consistent for you? Are
Mhm.
you honoring yourself? Are
Mhm.
you trying to stay present instead of being a little bit ahead of yourself, or
Mhm.
instead of always looking back in the past with regret? So those are some of the things that, yes, I'm trying to deliver to them through this most important job of parenting that feels like it's almost done, but it's actually never done, as you know as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever done, and it's interesting too. I originally, when we got the diagnosis about with what's going on with mom, originally I was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't tell Evie about it. Like, how do I explain this? And so it's really difficult, like how much information, how much to share, is it
Yeah,
too much? Is it too little? And so, she's seeing how I'm dealing with it, how, Lisa's dealing with it. And I think it's a good life lesson just to be able to understand, things like that. How do you manage, situations like that, and how to deal with them, like emotionally, like, anyways, it's just interesting that it's like you mentioned, like it's that do as I say, not as I do.
yeah,
Kind of, and so I think that the way that the boys have grown up, and then the way that we've been trying to raise Evie is like really, by example, right? Lead by example, right? So,
yes,
and so hopefully there's been good examples for her, but how we're dealing with mom's situation, or any kind of family stuff, rather than keeping it from her, or shielding her from it. I think that it's better to like have her involved in some way, that just so she
absolutely,
feels like she's got an active part in what's happening. So,
absolutely, yeah.
um, so as a designer, I'm, always about tools or services or things. And so if there was sort of one magical tool out there that could help you with, your career, like what you're doing now, what other than the chair,
Sure,
it's
yeah.
completely the awesome chair, which actually already exists, then that could be the thing that would be the ultimate tool for you. But what is there something that you would help you with your career? If you had a way of being able to, wish it into existence.
Well, now that you've taken the chair away from me, yeah, actually, there is something that has not been built yet. Um, it would be really great. So as a writer and as an introvert who's high functioning as an extrovert, but I'm totally an introvert.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not a self promoter, and it doesn't come from any sense of like, I'm not good enough. That's
Mhm.
not it at all. But it would be great if there was a way for sirens not to happen in the
Mhm.
middle of sentences. But besides that, it would be great if there was a way for a writer or an author, because authors struggle with this constantly, promoting themselves, right? Okay, my words are getting all tangled because it's such a big idea. So let me back up and give a bit of context, because the way writing used to be was you would sit quietly in your room,
Mhm.
your turret,
Mhm.
your treehouse, whatever the hell, and you would write your book and you would send it away and your publisher would sell it.
Mhm.
And you'd go write your next book.
Mhm.
That's absolutely gone.
Mhm.
That's absolutely gone. I, however, will bring that back, but not for a few years. So just pin that. That's going to
Mhm.
happen. But authors, writers must connect with their audiences. They
Mhm.
must promote, they must market themselves. And same with book coaches, everybody's got a list. I don't have a list yet. And I say yet, I'm not sure I want to go that way. I can write circles around Substack, but
Yeah.
I don't really want to do that.
Mhm.
So a tool that would somehow magically allow quiet creatives to
Mhm.
do their creating and let go, and
Yep.
not actually have to be the person who does the interviews, does the Twitter contests,
Mhm.
runs the Substack, always has promos on their list. Like that to me is, I'm not sure how we get away from it, because it makes sense to me, right? When I look at the way the market is,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
you've got to market yourself, but that would be a tool. I don't know if it would be a tech tool so much as
it could be a tech tool. It could be like a virtual hype person, right? You press the button and then off they go in their merry way. They've got, five, six different things that they would do on your behalf. But I think honestly, at the end of the day, like you're talking about like understanding who your target audience, who's your readership, right? Understanding what it is that they're interested. They want to meet you. They don't want to talk to a virtual assistant. They want to meet the author, right? And so how do you do that in a way that, like you said, it doesn't, so for somebody who's the creative, like be able to have the creative meet with their audience without necessarily stressing them,
Yeah.
putting them on the road and all the rest of it, right? Because
Well, and here's another thing to add to that is that, and I've only realized this in the last couple of years, but like a few minutes ago, you heard me say my words are becoming tangled.
mm-hmm.
That is actually a real experience for me as a writer. And there's a reason why people end up as writers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how many, authors you've listened to when they do public speaking or do interviews. Actually, public speaking doesn't count because you can rehearse that.
Yeah.
There's not all the time, but quite often people who are wordy people on the page,
mm-hmm.
they're wordy people on the page because being wordy, getting all the words organized,
Yeah,
and delivering is not a strength. It's a, like there's some adage about never meet your heroes, right? And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that really applies to like to a lot of people who are in the publishing industry, in the word industry, because we're our thinking, like Charles Eisenstein is probably the best example of somebody who can do both super well. Like he can write like a god, and he can speak like a governor.
Yeah, yeah.
Just phenomenal. But he's a real unicorn.
Yeah, yeah.
So like you're right. People want the thing. People want the person behind the curtain, but it's it's often really a difficult thing. And what we see sometimes out there in the space is that writers get shit on for opining in a way that maybe isn't collected or gracious, or maybe it's a little bit red around the edges, whatever. And then all of a sudden you've got a whole PR problem. So I don't think this is not exclusive to writers, that's for sure. But I as a writer, I really notice it.
Yeah, no, it's a different type of skill to be able to be in front of people on the fly,
on the fly,
entertaining, interesting, and I've always told people over the years that part of what I had to do in order to do my job well was to have like the persona of work Nicole, who is able to talk about things, doesn't fall over their words, is able to communicate well. But at the same time, it's like, that's the exact opposite of who I actually am. I hate public speaking. I'm really uncomfortable talking, and like even now in front of the camera. And I've been on panels before where you bring me out on stage, and like the first thing that I want to do when I get off stage is like throw up, or go hide in a dark place for a while. And so it's really interesting how people kind of have to adapt in order to get to the things that they want to do. So for authors that want to become famous authors, it's something that they have to either, develop a persona to be able to do those things and not completely, get burnt out. Or, maybe there is some other way. Maybe there is, maybe technology, maybe they could be like a deep fake that represents you. Off you go on your book tour, and so it leaves the creative people without having to, get into those uncomfortable places. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, maybe that's the thing that does make you, it differentiates you from just an author to a big A author, right? Is your ability to be able to kind of make that journey, to be able to get out of those uncomfortable spaces. Maybe that's kind of like the price of fame, right? Is that you don't have privacy anymore. You don't have, it's like you're kind of, your audience you now owns you, right? So it's sort of a something that would happen is the price of that success. So
well, that's part of why I don't want to publish on Substack. It's not that I am imagining that I'm going to be famous, but you give me 100 followers and 20 of them want to engage with the pieces that I write. And the expectation is that if you're going to grow your audience, you damn well better engage. That becomes like, you become a bit of a slave to
Yeah.
your audience over time. And I'm hearing that in the creative content creation space.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
who have these really great newsletters, really great followings. Like, I don't know what it's like for Shane Parrish or David Millard but David Perel, sorry. And who's Paul Millard.
Mm.
These people who are really a presence and a force as content creators. But I think it's really exhausting. And there's this expectation now that there never was before. You could write to an author, lots of letters, great. Mail in, awesome. Sometimes maybe I'll respond to mail in, but not when it's digital, not when it's like in real time, it becomes onerous and weird. There are a couple writers I've heard of who do a really good job of just like writing it, dropping it, and bugging off. Suzanne Collins, who did the Hunger Games, apparently she doesn't give any interviews. Or rarely, and she lives like in the mountains somewhere. So there's a few people who kind of do that, and I'm like, that I could see that for finding balance in this world.
Yeah, and she's pretty, and she's got quite a few books under her belt. So, I mean, she's able to do that probably only because she's not hanging around for the for the book tours and the accolades and stuff like that. So I could see that. Okay, so this is the last question.
Okay.
My favorite one. What kind of unicorn are you? Do you believe? Like, what is your personal magic?
Yeah, I don't know if I have personal magic. I
You
think
do.
you actually put your finger on it a few years ago when I did this process around Roy Group does an exercise called Leader's Gift.
Mm-hmm.
Find what is your gift. And you actually really nailed it, as close as anybody ever has. And you said it's just an ability to kind of connect people within a space, like when I'm actually in that space. So I do recognize that.
Yeah.
Being able to shift energetic load if the group is amenable to it.
You're like a magnet. Like even when we were kids, like you're able to kind of take like all this sort of chaos and like walk into it, and all of a sudden it sort of starts to it starts to form into something that's like more
like one of those have you seen those videos of the people who do energy work with like salt crystals?
Yeah.
Like, you get organized patterns, maybe it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, like there's just something about your energy that it's like, oh God, finally somebody who can fix this here. It's like you can walk in and go, oh, thank God, someone's gonna take charge of the situation. I think that's what it's making the connections between people, and then also like or putting order to chaos. I think is kind of the vibe that I remember very clearly you having. And then just now as adults, like reconnecting later in life, it's like it's sort of you have a very like confident aura, like it's very attractive because you feel like that's I don't know how a better way to describe it, but kind of like you said, like being able to connect people, like having all the connections together and being able to confidently connect those people. I think that's where I'm trying to describe it. So
yeah, and I think and thank you for that observation that you made those couple of years ago have actually shifted a lot of things for me. And in the meantime, I have been learning about human design, which was very new to me until a few years ago. And in human design, it's quite a complex sort of typing system, but there's this thing called your incarnation cross, and that's basically what you came here to do. My cross is very much what I was so shocked when I read what my cross is. And I remembered what you had surfaced when I did the Leader's Gift. I was so shocked because my incarnation cross is the cross of planning. So I'm meant to work with the tribe. I'm meant to kind of organize people and serve them and plan for what we're going to do. And sure enough, there's you years ago. Like you noticed this when we were at birthday parties when we were kids, recognized. So that's the strength of yours, this ability to sort of calibrate, and sort of make sense out of these data points and recognize patterns. But yeah, my cross is very much, my purpose here is very much in line with what you noticed all those years ago.
No, well, in addition to being an amazing person, amazing human being.
That's
So
very kind.
that's it. So that is sort of I've been like I really thought about like what are the 10 questions that I want to ask all of these different people. I'm focusing obviously on women because we really don't get the spotlight enough. There might be a few guys thrown in there here and there, but you know, for the most part, I've just been really fortunate my entire life to know these amazing women. And so this is thank you for being part of this project, and it will go up on the YouTube, and I this is my responsibility to curate and make sure that this channel and this information, whatever happens to YouTube, I'll move it to the next platform or the next whatever it's going to be. Like if it has to, you know, if it has to go to some different format, I'm going to be responsible for and curate this content so that it continues to live, like hopefully way beyond me. So that's the whole point of this, is being able to have a digital imprint of you and all of the amazing people that I'm talking to, and hopefully it'll be a record for the future. So
I
thank
love
you.
this. I appreciate you for doing this project, and I'm very interested to see where it goes.
It'll be interesting.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you.